Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
Hello. From Network Nova Live, everybody. It's February 16th, 2024. You are on the Friday Power Lunch. I'm Catherine White, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action. We are amplifying the voice of the grassroots man to get it done. And yes, to make politics fun. That's what we do. This is season 4 already, episode 7. We're like a soap opera. The Young and the Restless is kind of like a soap opera. And the theme today is women sparking change, because we're celebrating the courage, the determination, the panache of young women who are change makers. And I am so excited. I'm sure you are too. Mattie Kahn is here. She is the author of the new book, The Young and Restless, The Girls Who Sparked America's Revolutions. Yes. And it's about the untold story of those who helped spark America's most transformative social movement throughout history, teenage girls. And this is going to be so much fun today, everybody. So get your pants on if you don't have them on. We have Carolyn Deal here, a teen sparking change with her mom, which
Hello.
is Kate Amburgey. Hello, Kate, and Grandma Carol, badass Grandma Carol Amburgey.
Hey.
She has her flair and swag on. If you want to bring them up for one quick second, we can wave at them while I talk. You got to get a look of this intergenerational activist.
Hi.
When we talk about energy, this is it right here, folks. So we're so excited because the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. It really is. You guys are firecrackers. So we're so excited that you're here today. Are you guys equally excited?
Equally excited, yes.
Oh, good, because we will be talking to you guys in a bit. So hang tight with us and make sure you're comfy. So that's awesome. And lastly, we're going to talk about Delia Alcorn. Delia is a Virginia Tech student, and this House Bill 1345 is about campus post-sexual assault care, folks. And guess what? This woman figured it out. And this young lady said, hey, this is wrong. And she's working with Irene Shin on a bill. And I'm pretty sure it made it to crossover. We'll check on that later. But so glad you're in the room. And if you're new to this room, this is Network Nova's live Friday Power Lunch, and welcome. Stay for the after chat. We have so much fun past 1 o'clock. We turn things down a bit. You get a chance to speak to the guests. Some of them will be able to stay today. Mattie Kahn will stay a little bit. Last week, we had some great talks. We discussed last week, if you remember, we had birth and color on. Maternal Black care was so important. We have some bills in the House discussing this kind of care, but we were really grateful for that conversation. So when you come in the back room with us, we do talk about a lot of cool stuff. And we also, one great takeaway that Carrie Short said last week was Democrats should be proud. They're the party that leads with love. So that is awesome. And Miss Margaret reminded us of the importance of our vote. And that's always important. So the rules of the road, if you're new to the community, use the chat. Tell us where you're from. What are you doing right now? Are you working on crossover in Virginia? Are you just relaxing after Tom Suozzi won in New York? Because, little relaxation, then we got to get to the 2024 election. Let us know where you're from, what you're doing. And if you want to be really supportive today, support our show. We're a part of a Patreon subscription. We're cool. Like, you have a way to give us a little support, and we love our patrons. And Susan Wagner recently was our newest. I know there's more in the room. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because as we always say, no one is coming to save us. It is up to us. It's up to you. And we're glad you're here with us. And oh boy, what a mouthful. So let's get to our power chat with the wonderful, awesome, spectacular, sparkler, Fennell Norton.
Hi there.
I hear you giggling. Hey, what's this? You got a red tie on. I love it. Where are you going?
So listen, this is so exciting. This evening at 5:30, we're actually going to be hosting Senator Tim Kaine for a meet and greet. So I am
Oh,
really excited. I know Deborah Wharton's on the call today. She helped pull that
Deborah.
together. And we're just excited about that. So I'm going to be going right after that. So I'll put on my jacket and I'll be ready to greet the senator.
I know we have a lot to talk about. So we're going to have a speed session here
Okay,
because we
speed.
but we're going to talk about one. I love that you were able to respond to this quickly. You always say the power of the pivot. They were like, oh, we can't do this. This is too soon. You said, watch me, watch me. And
Yeah.
you organized this event. Good for you with Deborah. She's awesome. Let's start with some good national news. Democrat Tom Suozzi won in that hotly contested seat where yes, mother F, yes, 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 yes. And then Pennsylvania brought it for they wanted to get them. But that was a good old, I want to say Prokopiec. Maybe a good Slovak guy up there. Jim won that one. And that secured that majority for them because they really need that to pass some good bills. Give yourself a pat on the back. Working nationally, collaborating is super cool. So you got any good news to share before we get into some of the drama?
Yeah, well, I think I'd like to share a story. I think that's
Okay.
really good news, and it'll take us into our next segment. So I'm looking at the
Oh,
time.
you're going to go to
But
that story.
yeah,
Okay,
so,
we're
so
going
yeah,
to,
but I thought
go
you
ahead.
wanted to talk. Did you want to talk about crossover a bit? I thought
Yeah,
you wanted
let's
to talk
talk about crossover. Yeah, let's talk
crossover.
about the young and the restless in the General Assembly. I want to talk about the politics over policy session. Young new freshmen come into the General Assembly with high hopes, and then now we're on the ropes because not all of it's going so well. And you know what I want to say? We have a slim majority, folks, in the General Assembly in Virginia. We want it, but it's slim. That means everybody's a Christian cinema and has power. And that means you have to whip the votes, right? You get everybody.
Yeah.
That's tough work. And then you have to calculate what the governor will sign or not sign and what is worthy to sort of spend your energy on and survive this very 60-day craziness.
Yeah, I would say that. And I think as Democrats, we always have an expectation that our
Yeah.
folks will do the right thing because we watch pretty closely to see how people react in these situations. So there's a lot of bills out there. Some of it's
My
gonna work
my
and
bill
we'll
reading
be,
bills on. I have
yeah,
them
so
on.
put your bill reading glasses on.
Yeah.
So yeah, so did you want to talk about any in specific? Because I
Yes.
will, yeah, so go
Yes,
ahead.
I do. I want to say that, there's one thing the Dems stood up to the governor. He also liked to do tax cuts. He also just took so much money out of our budget. We have a tight budget now because he gave everybody that tax rebate we didn't need. And then he wanted to give the tax cut to the rich, and the Dems stood up to that. Good for them. And, after this wonderful success with the Super Bowl, we saw how important that the bills that we bring on assault weapons are because that parade where the Chiefs won the Super Bowl and then we have a shooting, it's devastating. So you know what? Let's keep the pressure on that. Reproductive rights, paid leave, climate, and clean energy. A lot of our priorities went to die, and that was really hard to watch. So now, as we watch what goes over. The SmackDown that was fun was on the arena in Alexandria, with the big sports arena. They want to move out of DC, and Lucas put the big SmackDown on the governor. Did you watch that?
I didn't see the SmackDown, but I know that you know all the details of the SmackDown. So why
Well,
don't you tell us?
SmackDown because the governor was a little nasty. He one week he said, "Oh, we got to work together. We got to be a commonwealth, and this is we have to be this, work together. How important it is." And then the following week, he gives a speech that basically is a MAGA speech and says Dems are evil, blah, 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 blah. They want to compromise. So Senator Lucas said, okay, that's how you feel. Woo, I'm going to table that. I'm going to, she's a finance person. So that was kind of, to me, I felt like, an interesting SmackDown. But we do have this tension between Nova and Tidewater that's new. But I want to say something. It's Black History Month, and I do want to talk about the bills in the General Assembly that reflect why it matters when you elect more people of color in the General Assembly. You get bills that reflect the majority. LaSharice aired on the telling the Senate, no, we're not going to police these licensed people. We're not going to police people by with those license plate readers. We have bills around drugs and fentanyl, and also criminal justice reform that is bringing forward because of the majority, and also even about the reproductive rights. We just have some great Black maternal bills. It matters who you send to the General Assembly, and it reflects the more women, more people of color, we have better policy. And
that is
what
exactly right.
story on
We
that?
always say people want to focus on the federal races a lot, but we always say the further down the ballot, the closer it is to your front door. And so that's why that's so important. But I want to talk about a bill that we hope will get passed. It's already passed the House, and it actually had some Republicans to sign on to it. And it also is in the Senate now, and it's also passed the Senate. And we had some GOP people sign on to that too. But it is a bill that was actually put to work by a 15-year-old. Her name is Simone Need. And what happened is she was with her parents for dinner, and she heard them talking about the Daughters of the Confederate, and they are not taxed. And she thought that was really wrong. How could you have someone who is still touting the lost cause and that they are getting a tax exemption in Virginia? So Simone went to work. She got in touch with Majority Leader Don Scott, and they went to work on a bill. And she's 17 years old now, and she is having the ability. She got a phone call from the Senate to let her know that that bill is going to be going up to the governor. And not only is it the Daughters of the Confederate, but there are two other groups that they broadened the bill out to add to it, who are also getting tax exemptions from something most people didn't even know about. But she made that happen. 15 years old.
I love it. I want to make one thing that people may not know about the legacy emissions real quick, because it is Black history. When the Supreme Court overturned that you couldn't factor in race in college admissions, legacy emissions, we have a bill that passed that will make sure that we even that out, that you, just because you're rich and all that, you don't get into school ahead of somebody else. So I think, like you said, teens finding this out, this whole tie-in to who we elect, let's get it rolling, because I'm so excited about our next guest when we really talk about what teenagers are doing.
Yes. And so that is why, Catherine, I'm going to say goodbye to you. And I'm going to say hello to Mattie Kahn. And so we have Mattie Kahn, who is the author of the new book, Young and Restless. And this is going to be some wonderful stories. But I want you to know that Mattie is an award-winning writer and editor, a former culture director at Glamour. And so, Mattie, I'm so happy to have you here today. We've had a chance to talk about this book and how much I love it. So what I'd like to start with is, when I flip a book open, I like to read the dedication and I like to read the quotes. So I'll let you say a few words about yourself, and then we can talk about the dedication and the quotes.
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's so nice to be here in this community, stopping by on a Friday. What a lovely way to end the week. As has been said, I'm the author of Young and Restless, The Girls Who Sparked America's Revolutions, a former magazine editor and writer. And I have always been interested in young women's capacity for change and for progress. And I wanted to make sure that there was a place on bookshelves in libraries nationwide where you could go and you could see these stories together. And I'm so proud that this book is out there, and I'm so excited to talk about it with you.
Well, wonderful. You can see my glee here. So let's talk about the dedication of this book, because I thought that was so fabulous. And as we have the family on today, it really does start with how, parents and those around you sort of spark young people and how they see the world. So let's talk about your dedication.
Yes, the book is dedicated to my parents. I am lucky to have many wonderful people in my life, but I think that one of the most underrated maybe advantages you can start out with in the world is to have parents who really believe in you and who really tell you and communicate to you that you can do anything you want. Fennell noticed that the book thanks them for many things that they've done for me in my life, but particularly takes note of a moment when I was much younger, in which they allowed me, despite running a small fever, to pick out something that I had badly wanted for my birthday. it's a little bit of a materialistic joke, but the reality is that I had and have luckily the kind of parents who understood that they had the kind of daughter who would do whatever she set her mind to, and who really encouraged that headstrongness, let's say. And I think that that's just one funny story, but truly they have served me so well in my sense of myself and in my sense of young women's capacity to have a voice and be heard.
So let's talk. You didn't tell them about being on the counter and then bringing your doll so that you could pick it out with your high fever.
Yes,
But
I don't
those
know
of
how
you,
many people on this Zoom are familiar with Madame Alexander dolls, showing my millennial age by having been obsessed with them at one time. But yes, as to be specific, I had been promised a Madame Alexander doll for my birthday. I was probably about 8 or 9, and I was to be picked up from school and taken to the fancy toy store where these were sold. And I had to be laid out across the cash register so that I could point to the doll of my choosing. I was so determined to come home with this doll. And I would say that my parents' indulgence of this ridiculous behavior, and I just want to clarify, in a pre-COVID era, before we would ever now send people sick out into the world, was just one more sign off from them in their resignation, perhaps, to the reality that when I wanted to do something, I was going to do it.
well, we are really glad. I also love the quotes. And so, Robin, if you'll throw those quotes up, I want Mattie to talk about them because I think when people see this book and read this book, they'll understand why you're so passionate about it and why the stories are so full and beautiful.
Yes, here are the quotes that feature at the start of the book, and I would say they represent kind of the two worlds and the worldviews that are represented in the book. So the first is a quote I love from Maya Angelou. I think many of us know her as the voice of a generation, someone who speaks so eloquently to the American struggle for progress in ways that are so eloquent and literary. We love her poetry, we love her writing. This is something that she said in an interview, and I loved it for just how candid it was. You know, she is somebody who didn't pull punches, and certainly knew how to have her voice heard. And I just love the idea of her saying this, a little bit of a little expletive in there, but she certainly gets her point across. I love to see a young girl go out and grab the world by the lapels. Life's a bitch. You've got to go out and kick ass. It's not the kind of line I think we associate with Maya Angelou, but that made it extra special to me that she had said this. And of course, from, a bard of our generation, Harry Styles, how can you say young girls don't get it? They're our future doctors, lawyers, mothers, presidents. They kind of keep the world going. So there you go. That's what the book really is about. And I think that they speak to the topics that I explore in the book so well.
You do. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about some of the stories in the book. We won't give it away because I think that's really important that folks get to hear these stories for themselves. But we're going to talk specifically about some of them, but the titles are also really fascinating in this book. And so can you talk a bit about how you came up with the titles, and then we'll dig into them a little.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that I wanted to, in the book, take you through in kind of chronological order. Oh, hold on. I'm hearing from my dog. Sorry to all these people who, if he starts barking, I will attend to him. But this is the reality of New York City living. I'm responsible for this creature. So we'll see how this goes. The book is really, I wanted to go in chronological order, and I wanted to tell the stories of so many extraordinary young women, but I also wanted to, in each chapter, kind of highlight an element of how I feel young women organize that is special and unique to the ways that I think girls gather. I think anyone who's been a young woman who's had female friends is familiar with how girls interact, how they build together, how they dream together. And I wanted to make sure that each chapter sort of got at that in a different way. So, for example, the first chapter about the Lowell Mill girls of Massachusetts is called Material Girls. Am I remembering that correctly? Yes, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Okay. you write a whole book and then all of a sudden it starts to feel so apart from you. You were like, who did write that? Who came up with that? But that was, very much about the fact that they were working with textiles, working in these mills, creating this material together, but also truly creating literal material together. They were writing stories together, producing magazines, gossiping, talking, sharing their lives in this really interesting way. And other chapters have titles like The Mouth on That Girl, the ways that we think of girls as talking back, as, wanting to have the last word, of not being necessarily those sweet little creatures of innocence that we sometimes imagine them to be. I wanted to write about female friendship, cliques, and the idea of how your friends can urge you to action in a way that's really profound and meaningful. And so even though the book is chronological and each chapter has kind of a different heroine in some ways, I also wanted to highlight what I think makes girls such special and natural organizers.
I think that's pretty awesome. We have to talk about, and we're going to come back and talk about some Swiftie stuff too, but I want to talk, we'll probably end with that, but I wanted, what I loved was Lost Leaders. And I want you to talk about that one, because it wasn't always nice. I mean, sometimes it felt really painful in terms of how some of these women were actually out there, but nobody knows them. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I mean, in this group, I know that everyone probably understands that activism is not straightforward and that progress is not easily won, and that sometimes what it takes to realize change comes at personal cost. And what I didn't want to do was write a book about how incredible girls are and not acknowledge sometimes the toll that this kind of work took on them. So that chapter in particular, I think probably many people know that students had a profound role in the civil rights movement. That chapter in particular is about Claudette Colvin, who was a teenager who 9 months before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. Claudette refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. And I think that story has sort of entered the public discourse in an important way, and I'm so grateful for that. Some people know Claudette's name. What I think they don't necessarily know is that in those months between Claudette's decision, to stand up for what's right, or to sit down for what's right, as the case may be, and Rosa Parks is doing the same thing, Rosa Parks and Claudette became actually extremely close. And Rosa Parks was running the NAACP Youth Council in Montgomery at the time, something she very much encouraged Claudette to join. What I wanted to show in that chapter, and of course we know that Rosa Parks goes on to be the face and figurehead of this movement, is that it's not so simple as just one person comes on the scene and then everything changes. Progress feeds progress. And Claudette, who felt really disappointed by the fact that she didn't get to be the leader of the Montgomery bus boycott, inspired this person who kind of became her mentor. And what I think is even more meaningful in some ways, because and everyone here again knows that progress sometimes requires a lot of paperwork. It's not all protests and strikes. There's often a lot of legislative work that goes on behind the scenes that doesn't feel so glamorous. After the bus boycott begins, Claudette actually joins this case, Browder v. Gale, that is the case that helps end the bus boycott and rules against segregation on buses throughout the South. And I just thought it spoke to the tenacity of this one girl, who knew probably that history would not remember her, or at least foreground her in the way that she might have hoped. But she was so devoted to this cause that she just kept at it in a way that I think is so inspiring. It's not always going to be simple, and it's not always going to be nice, to your point.
Yeah, and I will say, for this particular chapter in the book, you do make us emotionally connect to Claudette. I mean, I was feeling for her when she went to bed at night, and when she talked to her child and she said, "I think I did something good." And so I think it's just a really, really powerful story about how hard this work really is. And sometimes it does go unnoticed, but you did something really good. Let's talk about another chapter of your choosing, another story that really will get people who have not got this book yet to know why it's so important that they get this for their daughters and granddaughters and for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many stories that I love. I think one of the other ones that I became sort of attached to is the story of Mabel Pinghua Lee, who was a young Chinese immigrant and suffragist. So born in China, moved to the US as a small child. Her father was a minister in Chinatown, and that was the way that they kind of got around these very strict anti-immigration laws, really xenophobic anti-immigration laws. They moved to New York, and, you know, by all accounts, Mabel, this young woman, is such a star. She goes to kind of a very prestigious high school, and she gets admitted to Barnard College, which, you know, still exists in New York as part of Columbia University. She's one of very few Chinese women, and she starts speaking about the cause of the women's vote and women's suffrage at a time when not only could women not vote, but that, you know, Mabel herself had no hope of voting in this country as an immigrant. But she just believed so much that in women's equality, and very much expected that the US, standing for democracy as it is supposed to do, but doesn't always live up to that ideal, you know, would pass the franchise for women. And what I loved about her is that, you know, there are these records of the speeches that she would give. We're talking about a girl who's 15, 16, 17. She's giving talks to auditoriums packed with grown men and women. And a newspaper wrote that she was so charismatic that when people left, they didn't just leave a talk by Mabel, they left Mabelized by her talks, that she was so arresting and convincing. She ends up leading this massive parade up Fifth Avenue in New York, you know, tens of thousands of people following her. And again, I think similar to Claudette, you know, you have to imagine that Mabel's the kind of person who asks herself, you know, the baton is getting passed to me. How far can I take it? She knew she wasn't going to be able to do the whole job herself, but she does take it far enough, you know, to live to see suffrage become law. And I think, you know, she's not the kind of person. There are girls who were in this book who become lifelong activists and continue their activism until the end of their lives. Mabel had this period of activism, and then after her father dies, she takes over the church in Chinatown and doesn't continue in that same public life. I think something I grappled with in writing the book is, what kind of stories do we want for our activists, and what are the stories that we get? And I think that history is our guide, you know, and that was what I had to be loyal to, because what I wanted for Mabel was a life of world famous renown. But in fact, what she did was give of herself in really profound ways, and then, you know, express this duty that she felt to her family to take over the church and to serve her community in that way. I think it's interesting for all of us to think about how at different points in your life, the ways that you can give are different. And that's something I think Mabel really spoke to.
And what I think is also important based on what you've said here is that it doesn't, you said there's lots of paperwork when we're talking about Claudette. And it's the same with our young Virginia Beach young lady, Simone. She started, and she's 15 years old. She's 17 years old now, and this thing is finally, hopefully, coming to fruition. So it does take time. Is there anything else that you want to offer or talk about the book? Because I'm going to go to some of your articles, and I want you to talk about Taylor.
Yes, well, of course, we always want to talk about Taylor, always topical. I think that all I would say about the book is that I think, you know, the argument that I wanted to advance is not that girls do this work alone, or that we can, you know, stand back and let girls save the world, but just to show that young people have been on the forefront of change since the beginning of this country, and that there's a lot of work that can be done by mobilizing young people and giving and helping them find the tools to express themselves. I think anyone who's been on the internet knows that young people are some of our best communicators. So how do we work with young people, and young women in particular, to direct that voice and to harness that power? Because it is kind of the ultimate renewable resource. You know, more young people come on the scene every day, and I think that those are people we want to draw into the civic and political process. So yeah, I'm so happy you're all here to hear about the book.
Yeah, the book really is amazing. It is one of my favorite books. And I will also say that when we talk about your parents, I think that's important too. It's never, ever too late. I always say that young people don't drop from the sky. They have people who influence them, all of their relatives and friends. And so we have an opportunity through stories like this to do that. But I do want to spend a few minutes and hear your thoughts about this whole Taylor Swift thing, Beyonce too, and Barbie. But so let's talk a little bit about, you know, you think that's a good thing? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's like the past few months have made part of the case for the book for me, which is I have always felt, you know, from Elvis to the Beatles and beyond, we know young women drive culture. We know young women decide what's cool, what's in, what's out. That quote that I read from Harry Styles, that's a recognition of the power of his fan base, that young women decide what people are listening to, what they're watching. And yet, despite the fact that they are these extraordinary cultural drivers, and we kind of all know that to be true, young women have so little power. And actually in society, they have been so undervalued. And the book tried to kind of explore that. How is it possible that some of our best consumers, some of our best drivers of culture have so little political influence? And I think that that really kind of comes to a head with Taylor Swift, who has never moved on, and I think to her great success and credit, from the feelings and the emotions and the tropes and the phenomenon of girlhood. You know, she has built her career on saying girls are important, and the things that girls go through and the things that they think about and the ways that they feel and express themselves, those are the ultimate ways, in some ways, to express your emotional bandwidth, what you're thinking about, what you care about. She's never turned her back on that audience. And I think, yes, Beyonce and Barbie too have shown that there is a real hunger for stories of girlhood that respect girls. Now, I think the question that I ask in that story that we were talking about, and that I think we culturally have to ask, is how do we meet that interest and meet that demand, and then also empower girls to be agents of their own stories and really say, you are the protagonist, not just of Barbie, but of this country and of this future, and you are going to help steward that. So I think Taylor and Barbie and Beyonce unleashed a lot of girl power. And now the question is, how do we direct that and help mobilize that in a way that is, you know, productive and exciting, I think.
Yeah, that is the question. And it's so interesting because, some people are really afraid of Taylor, but I do think she's come within her power, and she didn't just start. I mean, she's sort of been down this path where she has a real opinion, and she's talked about it. And I am hoping that she will continue, and that people like Simone and in these stories will be the inspiration that women and young girls, and like the young woman that we have on the Power Lunch today, will continue to inspire and motivate us. Mattie, you're going to stay with us during the after chat for just a little while, and I know that folks will be so excited to hear from you, and Carol and Kate and Carolyn will be happy to hear from you too. So thank you so much, and I'm going to ask Catherine to come on up, and we're going to get to the next segment.
Yeah, I'm so excited. there I am. Hello, Mattie. That was so awesome. While I got you here, I want to make sure that we know there's somebody in the audience that's really special to us, Jessica Berg. She's a teacher, and she's one of the first in Virginia that has started a Women and Genders program, and just has this Summit Rise Up event every year where she is amazing to give this platform to these young women. And I just want to give a shout out to Jessica. I told her your book should be part of the curriculum. So
I would love that. Well, thanks for your work, Jessica. It's such an important task.
Yeah, and we're going to have her in the after chat. I hope she could stay. She may be at lunch. She's a teacher. So I just want to recognize when people do this kind of work and really, like you said, support young people. That's why I'm so great for the segue to our next intergenerational activism group. So hold your hats on, folks. I'm so excited to get some. Thank you, Fennell. That was awesome. I'm so glad to have Fennell here. I miss her when she's not here. I'm so proud of her being in school and doing everything that she does. So let's bring up the next segment. I'm very excited. We have ourselves here a generation, 3 generations of activists. And after hearing about this book, I'm sure you guys have ordered it.
Absolutely.
Maybe, right?
Absolutely. We love to add it to our collection of stories of women's suffrage, women's rights. So yes.
Right, because I'm going to say I've been in doing this, I'm women's rights background, and then to read, I love when I read a book that shocks me. And this was so great to really learn about your daughter and granddaughter. Let's start with Carolyn Deal. And I want to say that the mom is here, Kate Amburgey, and grandma Carol Amburgey. And I love it. And you have a pin on. Let's just start just real quick. I want to talk about your pin real quick. It's an ERA pin. Tell me about the 59-cent pin you have on, Carol.
Well, decades ago, when we were first starting this quest to get a constitutional amendment, I was somewhere protesting someplace, and these pins were indicative of what women were making versus the man's dollar. We were making 59 cents. And I happened to find this yesterday, irony. And so now I think the equivalency is more like 84 cents to every man's dollar, something like that. Yeah.
Making it up the chain, right, Carol. Well, I'm so excited because we found out about Carolyn, and after, you inspire us so much, and that's why we have your mom and grandma here, because what we're really seeing is how important that mentorship is, or just really that support is, and also how it does spark you. But I do want to talk to you first, because that's how we found out about you. And can you talk about what sparked you into action? And this Yellow Roses that you have founded, this organization. I want to find out what makes you, spark up, and a little bit about you first.
Yeah, hi, I'm Carolyn. So I think my whole life I've been raised with these two amazing women, kind of like teaching me about activism, cheering me on in everything that I do. So I remember very key when I was like 6 years old, my mom took me, and grandma, they were both there, to go make phone calls for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election.
You were 6?
I think I was 6.
Yeah, 6.
Yeah. And that was like something that definitely changed my life forever. I will always think back to that moment whenever I'm doing advocacy now. So I think during COVID, me, my mom, and some of my siblings started an organization called the Yellow Roses, where we're trying to reach an unlooked at generation of kids who want to spark a change in their community and their democracy, and to kind of inform them about the things that are happening around them. Because I know when I was like 8 years old, 9 years old, and I was trying to join some of these advocacy groups, a lot of them were geared towards high schoolers. And so I really wasn't able to like have that advocating experience with other people my age. So I think that it's really important for this next generation of children to have that opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking at mom. So mom, and what I love is in the sense of the fabric and background, and being mom, and just, again, she's looking directly at you. You are inspirational as well. Let's talk about, your role here, or your role as you feel it, and even in your own life, sitting next to your mom. Like, how does this all feel to you, and where you are now, raising your children, actually being at home with them, and making sure that they have opportunities to be exposed to this kind of activism?
Absolutely. I wanted my kids to feel empowered to use their voice, because I, am an educator. I respect children. I believe in the power that they have from a very young age. And so I wanted to create opportunities for them to use that voice, but to do it in a way that's not overwhelming or depressing for kids. And so we have really worked to find those avenues to create opportunities, and to create moments that are both empowering, but also like at the level where a kid can grasp them, that they can feel that sense of empowerment. I like to say that if you learn it as a kid, you live it as an adult. And so I wanted to make sure that my kids, when they were young and still listening to me, that these messages were like, yeah, but these messages were in their heart and in their minds, so that they could carry them throughout their whole lives.
Yeah, so it all sounds so perfect, right? But we know that being a teenager myself, not always so much. We are a handful, aren't we? And I love that. That's the energy that really breaks through when we do this kind of work. So Carol, in your mind, what's going through? Like, I think about where a lot of people in this room are in that generation you are. And you saw in the chat, a lot of them experienced the big no, there wasn't opportunities. So I think we really need to start with you. You seem to be the main person that really had this trickle down to your daughter and now your granddaughter. So
Well,
give us, Carol, what's going on?
Well, piggybacking on what Mattie was talking about, her family, her parents, I was thinking when we were preparing for this session, where did I start my activism? And then I remembered that my grandmother and my mother worked for 50 years independently at this resale shop that in Oak Park, Illinois, that gave money to 9 different charities. And the fact that they did that for 50 years. And then I've got 3 sisters and we're all doing activism things. So it shows you that it just doesn't pop up. It's learned. It's learned.
It is learned.
Yeah. So
let's talk about you. Like, so as a young person, what really sparked you when you think, I know you think back on that definitely influenced you, but when you really stepped into that first protest or that first shirt or that bumblebee outfit or whatever.
Well, I think Kate reminded me that when they were young, probably 6, I have 3 children, 6, 4, and 3, I would pay them to pick up trash on the roads and award them with a McDonald's hamburger. If that is the irony of
Today.
Anyway. Yeah, right. But I think that's just a little spark started. I became League of Women Voters president
Right.
in Naperville, Illinois, when the kids were 6, 4, and 3 and babies, and I thought, what am I doing? But anyway, we got through it. So just that kind of thing. I'm very interested in climate, so I've been infusing that into their bloodstreams here. And we're constantly going on with marches and rallies and lobbying at Annapolis. Yeah, lobbying in Annapolis when they're 3 years old. And so
I want to go, so Carolyn, or anybody want to comment, but I do want to think about when I talk to young people, climate's really important to them. Carolyn, are you finding that, you all?
Yeah, I think, I remember, I don't know. I think when we started our activism, definitely one of the first marches I ever went to was a climate rally. And I remember we would do Zoom calls for climate.
Trash
pickups. Yeah, that was our first organizing service project was trash park cleanups. Every Friday of the month we would do park cleanups.
And I think that from when I was a kid, that moment, I can still see and feel that moment when we were there picking up trash to get that McDonald's Happy Meal. And so when I saw Carolyn understand the gravity of climate change because of her grandmother and her grandfather and all of their activism, when I saw her understand that gravity, I knew that I had to give, I didn't want her to look back and be like, Mom, why didn't we do anything? And so we began to organize park cleanups because it's a great way for kids to understand, to see the relevance of their work. You start with an empty bag, you are done, you have the weight of the bag at the end of the park cleanup, and you see the beautiful park that you have contributed to. And so in those ways, we're not banging down doors, but we're building up that sense of agency, that belief in yourself that you can be effective change in your community.
And that's the agency point, right? Carol, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and they branched out from the local level to the international level by collecting pennies for peace. For how many Halloweens have you done this?
5, 4 or 5.
So they learn about girls in Afghanistan and Kazakhstan.
Pakistan, Tajikistan. I have my whole spiel.
Tell me your spiel.
So basically when I was I don't remember how old we were, 6 when we started. We've been doing it for a while now. Every Halloween we do this thing called Pennies for Peace, which is where we're collecting money for girls' education in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Tajikistan. So basically, we tape a little flyer to a paper bag and put it on everyone's door.
Nice.
And on Halloween night, when we go trick or treating, we collect the pennies that they've put in the bag, And I think that was one of our most effective service projects. We
Absolutely,
raised
thousands of dollars.
thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
I love that. And I know we need to wrap up here soon, but I know that you're going to put in the chat, but you do, what I love about it is you did talk about voting and maybe some part of voter registration, but you do have some events coming up for Women's History because March is coming up upon us. So you do have some great things planned and maybe how people can get involved. Maybe you can put, right?
Yeah, sure. I can send those in the chat.
Do you want to talk about it?
Just talk about a 30-second elevator pitch.
Okay. Speed run. So this March, every year we do something called the Women's History Month of Service, which is where we try to highlight inspiring women and do a month-long service project dedicated to them. So this year we're doing Dolores Huerta, who is a farm workers' rights activist. So we are collecting used button-up shirts to donate to the farm workers to protect them from pesticides when they're working in the fields. So we're going to set up collection boxes all over Maryland, DC, Virginia, to kind of try to collect as many shirts as possible. And then also we are going to be doing some Sunday voting rights story times with the Belmont Paul Women's Equality Museum down in DC. So yeah, every Sunday in March, we'll be reading 2 inspiring women children's books at the monument, kind of in doing an arts and craft, kind of talking about those women, talking about how these young kids can kind of like make a difference.
Yes.
Maybe I forgot something.
Well, I love it. And I hope you guys will stay in the after chat with us. And I think, well, hopefully that the author will be there. We'll be able to talk and ask more questions. I love that service project, what you guys are doing together. It's such a pleasure to see all 3 of you on the screen. I think today we needed this big smile, didn't we? I think it's been a week, people in the room. Let's give a round of applause. And thank you for being here. And we will enjoy seeing you again in the after chat. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Woo! I'm telling you what, it's so exciting. And I want to make sure that our next guest, Delia Alcorn, some of you may know that name. Her auntie, Elizabeth Alcorn, ran for office out in rural Virginia. And also her dad, Walter Alcorn, is one on the Board of Supervisors in Hunter Mill. And I want to make sure that we listen to this interview we did. She's a Virginia Tech student, and it's really important what sparked her. So let's roll. All right, everybody, we're back in the room. Delia Alcorn is with us. She is a student at Virginia Tech and part of the Undergraduate Student Senate at Virginia Tech. How awesome is that? So welcome, welcome. How are you doing, Delia?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, it's great because we're doing a great show today about young women sparking change, and we want to learn what your spark is and what you did to fix an issue you found out about. And I found out about you because of another friend who said, you need to meet this young woman who is making change down at the General Assembly, who brought a bill forward and did the research behind it. So I want to dig deep into first, what problem did you discover in, that you decided that you needed to bring your voice into this to fix it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, advocacy is in my blood. My father is a member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. So I grew up in a home that really values, working to help people and things like that. And I became aware that there is no nearby resource for those who have been sexually assaulted on Virginia Tech's campus. You actually have to travel about 18 miles for the closest sexual assault forensic exam provider to get appropriate medical care and evidence collection. And I just thought that, this is not acceptable. I did a lot of research and I lobbied the administration here at Virginia Tech to adopt, it's called a SANE care program, sexual assault nurse examiner, which has been very successful. I've been so blessed to have worked with so many wonderful administrators here. I've had so much support here. And in that process, I did, so much research. I thought, could this be applied on the state level? So I was very blessed to be able to work with Delegate Irene Shin, who sponsored a bill, House Bill 1342, to require, I believe the language is public baccalaureate institutions in Virginia, so the public universities in Virginia to have care.
Yeah, and let's identify the issue. In your research, and I was shocked to find this out, there is only one public university that actually has services at its school campus for the students there.
Yes. Yeah. UVA has a wonderful program, and I've been very blessed to be able to work with the nurse who actually founded that program, Carrie Hendricks at UVA Student Health Center. I actually had a tour of their Student Health Center and their SANE program back in January, and it's so clear from, the design of the program, from the nurses' attitudes, even down to the design of the building, that victims are central. How can we best make it comfortable for them? How can we make the bathroom close to the room? Things like that. They really put survivors at the center, and I want to replicate that program at Virginia Tech and, further at different universities throughout Virginia. The most important thing is that when you receive care that includes evidence collection that is performed by a qualified practitioner at a facility specifically that has a SAFE program or a SANE program, it is covered by the state.
Yeah, that's incredible to me that, and not that it even existed after all this time. I mean, when you brought this issue up and we talked about it, it was really one of those shocking discoveries, because I'm thinking of all these young women and men sexually assaulted. And you had said that there is a medical facility on campus, but they do pregnancy testing, maybe a disease STI testing. Yes. And I was just really amazed when you said they have an option to take an Uber to wait to this 18-mile trip to the hospital to get this kind of care. And then I'm thinking, that's just the one college. Could you imagine all these colleges, public colleges we're talking about, the 4-year programs that don't have this kind of care? Yes. Maybe how many rape victims aren't getting properly tested?
How many rape victims are not getting tested? They're not getting pregnancy and STI prophylaxis. They're not getting evidence collected. So they have pretty much no case, because most of the vast majority of time, the evidence, the forensic evidence from the physical evidence recovery kit, the PERC kit, is the most important piece of evidence in a sexual assault trial. So these are people that do not have access to proper care, trauma-informed care, free care, evidence collection, and also the resources that usually come with these exams. I mean, usually they send victims home with a packet of, here's your resources for prosecution. Here's some financial resources if you need them. Here's mental health resources, domestic violence resources. So having a program like this has so many benefits, and it just requires, the framework to exist as the state defines a sexual assault forensic examiner program to access all these benefits and provide them to people who need them.
Well, you did the legwork, and then your next step, like you said, you contacted Delegate Irene Shen, contacted her office. And what's great about being in that student body that you are in at Virginia Tech, this opportunity to really think about how you can make a change. It seems like such a great program to be in. Calling the delegate, and then go to that step next. How did that interaction, when you thought, I'm going to write a bill?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, this is my first time doing anything like this. I don't know, I didn't know, before session how any of it worked. I didn't even know that, the session didn't go on all year. I really had no knowledge base for any of this. So, when I was able to meet with Irene, or with Delegate Shin, she was so helpful, because she is so knowledgeable with all of this. And she, I felt so at ease with her, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is somebody that really knows what they're doing. And I have, somebody really smart on my side. I'm so grateful now. But yeah, I mean, they have a bill right now. It's House Bill 1342. It's been assigned to the Education Committee and further into the Higher Education Subcommittee for consideration. I believe it'll be heard this week or next.
So the next step after you wrote this bill, and then now I hear that you'll be going down for Advocacy Day, and this is part of this. Again, the school provides this kind of opportunity for you. Tell us what you're going to do next on this bill.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be advocating for it in my meetings with legislators. I'll continue to tell my family and friends, have them write to their legislators. The most important thing here is just the most people possible hear about this bill, can get behind this bill, and most importantly of all those is to let their representatives in at the state level know that they're supporting this bill and the reasons why they're supporting this bill.
Right. So let's end it. Let's tell for our last takeaway to the audience about you. We're talking about young women sparking change. What do you think we can do about sparking more women like you to get involved to make change? Is there a secret behind what sparked you?
I mean, I think for me personally, I don't want to speak for other people, but for me personally, what really motivated me was an understanding that I can make change, that my legislators are accessible to me, that advocates will work with me, and that an idea that I have, if I develop it, if I research it, and if enough people get behind it, something can really be done. Just the hope that something can be done, which I have to credit to my parents, to my mentors throughout this project, to my colleagues in the undergraduate student senate, to administrators at Virginia Tech, these people that have encouraged me, and said, this is possible, this is needed, and we support you.
Yeah, that is true. That support system is
Absolutely.
what we know really is helpful. And that is a good lesson to everybody in the room. We need to support young people and their ideas. So thank you for being here, Delia Alcorn. Good luck. And I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, about that bill being passed. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay! How exciting. That was so great to meet her, and she's in school, so we had to record that. It was so much fun watching myself. I didn't have to even worry about stuff. But I want to make sure we get to the end of the show. We have wrap up because we do have a few minutes, and folks, hold on tight for the after chat. But we got some important stuff to talk about, especially when it comes to making sure that we acknowledge Black History this month. But I want to make sure we thank our guests, author Mattie Kahn, Carol Amburgey, Kate Amburgey, and Carolyn Deal and Delia Alcorn. Thank you for being on the show today. And so let's do a summary, Fennell.
Yeah. So
takeaways, and I know that, and then we want to make sure we get into some of our moment.
Yeah. So the key takeaway for me is the importance of parents in all of this. And I think the quote that I will take with me is, you learn it as a kid, you live it as an adult. And then of course the powerful stories from Mattie. So that's my takeaway today is that parents are a really big role model in all of this, and it's never, ever too late.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a great takeaway. And so I really want to make sure that we have, we wanted to talk about Ruby Bridges today. And before we bring that up, I also think that two things that kind of tie into this, what we see with the Fannie Willis case and the treatment, I feel like, of this Black woman who's put herself out here to save democracy. All eyes were on her yesterday. And I had to say that I was just in my heart, just leveling my support of her, because I know that what it's about, this hit on this woman, and watching her try to defend herself was really difficult. And then down the General Assembly, if people were paying attention, the GOP in Virginia tweeted at our leader, the first Black leader ever in the General Assembly, about his time spent in jail. I don't know if you happen to saw that tweet. It was pretty low, and talking about tying his time in jail to this kind of ease on people that have drug felonies. And actually, the governor issued an apology today. And I'm just saying this because we are still living this time where we see this happening every day. It's just not the past. It is in the present.
Yeah, so I think that I know we're short on time, but we have to talk about this Black History moment.
Let's go.
And I think we have some really great comments around it. So the person that I wanted to recognize for Black History is Ruby Bridges. And I love her story of this 6-year-old with her mom deciding that they're going to integrate the school. And the story really is that when she was born, it was actually after Brown versus the Board of Education it happened. And then they moved to Louisiana, and her mom really wanted something better for Ruby. And so, of course, it still took them until 1959 to actually integrate. And what happened was Louisiana only did it because the federal court ordered them to integrate. Even at that, they came up with a test that they gave to Black children to see if they were smart enough to actually go to school with the white kids. And 5 of them passed. But they only Ruby's parents decided that they would let her go to school. And so throw up the pictures, Robin, because I want us to talk about this, and I want folks to see this beautiful little girl. And I want you all to be encouraged to read the story because it really does go on. Because you can see she's dressed in these beautiful little clothes. There was actually a white psychiatrist who was really worried about what this was doing to Ruby. So he actually met with her parents and Ruby every week. And what they didn't know was that they were getting these beautiful little clothes that her parents would have never been able to afford. And later on, they found out that Dr. Cole was actually sending these clothes to Ruby. But what I want you to see here are these people who are yelling and screaming at this child every single day. She had to have federal agents escort her to school for the entire first year. And even at that, later on, 2 white children came to school, but they separated them. So a teacher from Boston actually came to teach Ruby. And not only that, they packed her lunch every single day because they were afraid that someone would try to poison her. And you can see this coffin in the picture. And later on, as an adult, she said that she would dream about that. She would dream about that coffin swirling around her room. So I say all that to say this 6-year-old little baby and her mom and all the things that they went through in terms of being short and being powerful and bold and brave enough to integrate this school. And Catherine, you make this wonderful point about where we are today and the kinds of things that are happening today. So I'll let you finish with that point.
Just so much to say here. And I think when I look at these white women on the sidelines screaming and yelling, and I say to myself, and as an activist and just as a human, even as a young teen, when I look back on my life, I always said to myself, where do I think I would stand? Like in Germany in this time where maybe the Holocaust, I always try to challenge myself. Where would I stand? What side of the road would I stand on in the civil rights movement? And so when I see these pictures, I have to ask, my white friends or white people in society to say to them, where are you at? Where is this? When you look at these pictures and you say to yourself, oh yeah, I support, this was another time past in history. I would never be on that sidewalk. I never would be doing that spitting. And I say, yeah, I don't know. You're voting for the wrong way. You're on the wrong side of the sidewalk. And I just say, I would like to sometimes superimpose certain people's faces on these women just to show them that we're in history now, and this is where we need to stand up. So to me, it was really powerful lesson when I see these pictures, and I think people, they think to themselves they wouldn't be on that side of the sidewalk, but I look at their actions today and I say to myself, I think maybe you are on the wrong side of the sidewalk.
Yeah, and so I hope that you all will take the time to go and read Mattie Kahn's book, Young and Restless, and also go and dig in and to the facts and details about Ruby Bridges, because they really are wonderful, and it will just give you it will make you feel more brave and hopeful and bold.
I'm gonna bring up Margaret Morrison, because she has got a picture of Ruby Bridges that she's holding up.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. Miss Margaret is she's our co-host, I would say, by this time. We love it. Where'd you get that picture at, Miss Margaret?
Oh, hold on. Let me make it so she can speak.
Yeah, I love it.
Margaret, you can speak now.
Yes, I've had this picture for years. In fact, I'm a history buff. And Ruby is one of my sheroes. And I found out today I have several more. Carol, Kate, Carolyn, Mattie. My sheroes, thank you. But yeah.
I love it. And I love it. Thank you so much. I also saw in the chat that with the book bans, we saw that some of these books were banned. Jessica Berg testified in front of Congress about those book bans, about Ruby Bridges' life. So we have a lot of sheroes in the audience. A teaser for next week. The big wins we talked about. Let's feel good, people. Like I said, we're the party of love. Pat ourselves on the back. Next week, we're going to have the Tom Suozzi grassroots campaign team here. We probably will have Tom Suozzi here as well. We also have the New Hampshire Biden write-in campaign team here. So we're bringing it. Next week's our national show. We're glad you're in the room. Let's go to After Chat. And thank you to everybody that supports the show. If you're not a patron, be a patron today after this show. Why not? And thank you to the team that brings this show every week. We appreciate you, everybody in the room. Thank you.